Did that get your attention? The title, the extreme, the ultimate historic snowstorm? I hope so, because we got a lot to cover today. So if you haven't put two and two together, yes, I gotcha, an early April Fool's or a big old troll for all you guys out there hunting for these excessive forecasts and historical totals of snowfall. I had to get back here on the YouTube channel and make a full video because I'm a little sick and tired of seeing all these recommended suggestions popping up on my YouTube and on my social media telling everybody that across the United States, and if you live here, prepare for 75,000 inches of snow. This is going to be the worst event we've ever seen in recorded history. Our children are going to hear about these storms when they're old enough to understand. Welcome back to the Weather Center, everybody. We're doing a hard segment today because we have some pretty pertinent info to pass along to many of you viewers out there, not only in the upper tier United States, but the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and across the Deep South and the Southeast, where we face yet another upside-down new weather threat looming on the horizon. Thank you very much for joining me today. It is January 18th, 2024. Time is really trucking along, and I can't believe we're already ready to reach the back half of January of 2024 for that matter. If you like what you see, and forgive me for the absolute clickbait troll title and thumbnail today, guys, I just see so much misinformation flying around the weather sphere, and especially on YouTube, that I'm here to kind of lay it out all on the table and delineate and kind of defer all of the information that you may be hearing from other sources that just really ain't that true. So please, if you do enjoy the video, in all seriousness, please like and share this content. Please subscribe to the channel if you are brand new, and click that notification bell so you don't miss a future update as we slowly but surely get back into the YouTube sphere. Let's get started. So as we know, we have yet another Arctic blast coming in. I was not hyping that up. That is truly what's about to take place, and it is already doing so over the northern United States, moving towards the Midwest and the Great Lakes. We're looking at our 12Z European model. This is going to be our 500 millibar heights, and you can see that very deep bubble of cold air trudging through the northern tier across the Great Lakes, helping to bring down those sub-zero and near-zero temperatures down all the way as far south as the Mid-Atlantic region, parts of the Appalachians, Ohio and Mississippi valleys, and into the Central Plains, where we'll be just below freezing and watching for yet another round of severe icing and freezing rain. I'll show you that at the back end of this segment. We are expecting a pretty decent warm-up, though. I've been seeing a lot of folks out there saying a major thaw. Now, it's not going to get that hot for a large majority of us. Down across the south, as El Nino shows itself for one last potential very full-fledged firing on all cylinders influence, that's where we're likely to see temperatures surge into almost spring-like conditions. But this will predominantly be for the desert southwest, the very deep south Gulf coastline, and Florida Peninsula up towards the Carolinas. The rest of us are still going to be feeling the effects of winter, and we will still continue to see Alberta Clipper systems and dose of snowfall after dose of snowfall for the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the extreme northeastern United States. So the snow and the cold weather is not done for some of us. As you take this through time, you can see our upper air pattern eventually zonals out. It kind of becomes a lot more west to east in orientation across the lower 48 and Canada for that matter, with our major polar and Arctic thicknesses now retreated all the way back above the Canadian international border of the United States. So you can kind of get an idea that even though we have this trough axis extending over the heart of the nation, we aren't going to be as frigid, as under as dense of cold air as we are right now. It'll still feel like winter time, but we're going to be a lot more mild. And this is precisely why. So if you look, we have the northern branch of the jet that's readily apparent up over the Canadian provinces of Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, crossing actually westward over the James and Hudson Bay area and then down south into the upper tier United States. This finger of the jet is going to be our polar front jet troughing down along the Gulf coastline, moving through the southeast United States, where we could see some occasional showers and rainfall as that warm sector in the Gulf begins to move to the north and help amplify what freezing precip chances we have in parts of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee today and into the early morning hours of tomorrow. As you move along, you can see that west to east zonal flow begin to take shape, and our jet becomes very, very diffuse. We do still have a long wave trough, as I identified, at 500 millibars over the central parts of the CONUS, but because we don't have a whole lot of jet energy associated with this, it's very easy to infer we probably don't have very substantial temperature discontinuity, because temperature discontinuity or contrast between the north side and the south side of our strongest polar front jet winds is actually what helps to create that acceleration in our wind flow at 300 and up to 200 millibars. showers. And here it is readily apparent we don't really have that going on in our El Nino jet across the deep south. If you look down towards the southern United States, over Mexico, and especially the southeast, it is going to start to really intensify, and it's going to take on a little bit more of those aggressive characteristics with a very, very sharp amplitude blocking ridge beginning to develop as a result of this over the west. That's going to provide us with that warming trend. This is where we stand on WPC's surface analysis as of this afternoon and going forward into their forecast mock charts. If you look up over Montana, we have that massive 1048 Arctic high spilling south out of the western Canadian provinces, helping to force a lot of that modified polar and bona fide Arctic air across much of the Great Plains, spreading widespread snowfall and especially the lake effect snowfall through the Great Lakes region and into the northeast, where we could see a couple inches of accumulation. Despite the title and the thumbnail of this video, I will openly admit once again, if you aren't tracking by now, that was extremely clickbaity, trollish, just kind of on the same level as I've been seeing a lot of these other weather channels out there putting out across on their social media and on their YouTubes alike. If you look across the Mid-Atlantic region, particularly West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, this is my primary concern. I'm not really too worried about the snowfall in this case. I know you've probably seen other weather sources you typically tune into mentioning 12 to 20 inches of snow, maybe more, historic. That's not happening, and in fact, this is probably one of our more weaker systems that we've seen since we actually got into the heart of the wintertime season, or the peak of winter season. Just as we would characterize the peak of hurricane season, we do actually have a peak of the wintertime, and we are currently seeing it until El Nino gives its one last final hoorah before dissipating through February, March, and especially April. The mixed wintry precip and the severe icing we could be seeing throughout Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia is more concerning, at least on my radar here in the Weather Center, because this could play a very prevalent role in exactly how our morning commutes and our afternoon commutes to go back home are affected. It could be very hazardous, if not dangerous, to drive around on the roads, and this could also be a potentially harmful event for any sort of air traffic we have traveling through there, as well as airplanes and other types of aircraft, especially rotary aircraft such as single engine or propeller driven, really do not fare too well in light to moderate icing, let alone severe clear icing that is usually brought on by any sort of freezing precipitation. Now again, as I've kind of alluded to with the title of this video, I've been seeing a lot of shenanigans going on across the weather sphere, and if you are watching this right now, shame on you. Shame on you for trying to clickbait your viewers into following your channel and getting those likes, getting those subs. I understand a lot of us usually fell back on the hurricane season for a lot of the excitement, and we've been away from that for several months, but it's coming back soon. We'll be there very soon, so don't worry. We can switch gears and go back to fully focusing on the tropics soon enough, I can guarantee it. But in terms of our historic and record-breaking and just all-around extreme weather systems that we've been facing, we really haven't had any of that happen in over a week or so now. And if you look here on pivotalweather.com, this is our 72-hour snowfall accumulation observation chart. And as you can see, unless you are over very, very high-terrain mountainous features, you're really not getting a whole lot of snowfall. It looks like over parts of Kansas, the Front Range of Colorado into Missouri, we're seeing maybe between 1 to 2 inches of snow. And then over the Appalachians, we've saw some pretty good accumulation over those higher terrain features, especially into parts of western Kentucky through West Virginia, Tennessee, and further up the eastern seaboard. But again, it's really going to be those lake effect areas. If you look in the peninsula of Michigan and on the eastward side of Lake Erie and Lake Huron, that is where we're actually seeing some abundant accumulation totals, because you've had that snow like we've seen with thunderstorms and rain events training over top of you. So that's really where a lot of our heaviest snowfall accumulation is occurring. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to a little bit of actual heavy snow forecasting, because anybody in their right mind can pull up a total snow accumulation chart and go all the way to the end of the timestamp or all the way to the end of the loop and create what looks to be a 30, 40, 50-inch event. Of course, if you have multiple systems, multiple rounds of snow affecting a certain area, a model that hypothetically goes out, we'll say like the Euro 240 hours, is going to naturally show very heavy accumulations 240 hours into the future. So what I like to do on this channel, and whenever I'm forecasting for any sort of heavy snow or winter event, is I'll look at the 6-hour trends, I'll look at the 12-hour trends, and I'll look at the total accumulation for a 24-hour period. And then if I know I'm going to have multiple storm systems moving over a certain area, then I will fall back lastly on that total accumulation model to give folks an idea of exactly how much snow we could see from point A to point Z on the calendar, as opposed to saying one specific storm or one specific event is going to drop 30 feet of snow in your area, look out, batten down the hatches, take cover. So what we're looking at here is 700 millibar winds, and typically where you want to look for your heaviest band of snowfall is between your 700 millibar and your 850 millibar troughing. So in this case, we're going to pay close attention to where our winds and our contour gradient seems to trough the most with this Arctic supported system. And as you can see, I'll go ahead and take this loop through time. It looks like where we could see most of our heaviest snowfall, just looking at 700 millibars, could occur right in through this general area here. I can see at least one trough perturbation here, and then another one just out ahead of it, moving through the Midwest and exiting into parts of the Northeast United States, headed towards Pennsylvania and New York State. And if I bring you guys over to the 850 millibar chart, as you can see here, we're going to go back in time just a little bit so we can track this through. We do have one particular trough axis right in through here. So I would imagine, based on the layout of our mid-level pattern here, we're probably going to see our most heaviest snowfall accumulation occur through this corridor right up and through there before the system attempts to take on a bit of what looks like a negative tilt as it tries to exit off the eastern coastline. Now, we also want to take a look at how much moisture we have in the atmosphere, because believe it or not, it can be too cold and it can be too dry for snowfall. I don't really care how cold it is or how much cloud cover or how much the models are indicating precip. If we don't have the relative humidity, if we don't have the moisture or the precipitable values in the atmosphere, you're not going to get very much snow or any kind of precipitation at all. And as you go through the first couple of hours of the Euro loop, you can see we have plenty of good moisture moving through right about the same general area where we saw our 700 and 850 millibar troughing on those previous charts. So I would anticipate if we are going to get some good snowfall, it's going to be right where I have my circle drawn, and we'll kind of confirm that right now. So as you can see here on our 12Z GFS, we're starting out with the Kuchera overlay, which is just a hint more accurate than just taking a strictly 10-to-1 ratio model and trying to look at how much total snowfall we'll see on the ground. And the main reason is this takes in a bit more of the finer variables that go into forecasting snow. I'm not going to elaborate on that too much because I'm going to lose you guys. You're going to click out of the video. But in layman's terms, basically, this method will have a little bit more of the finer data plugged into it to give you a bit, just an arguably bit better look at how much snowfall we're expecting. And as you can see, as we go over through time in the 24-hour totals here, you can see we're getting about maybe 3 to 4 inches across the board here for most of the Midwest near to the Great Lakes, where we are seeing a little bit of more accumulation associated with our lake effect. And again, over the higher terrain peaks of the northern and central Appalachian Mountains, we could see upwards of a foot of snow, but we're talking the highest peaks out at this point. We're not really going to see a whole lot of inhabitants or localized urbanization up in those general regions. If you take this a little further through time, it actually looks like the GFS wants to miss a large majority of the northeastern United States and take it offshore before it can dump a lot of more snowfall for New York State and further up into the northeast, even approaching parts of Maine and crossing the Canadian border. Doesn't seem like we're going to get maybe besides a dusting, if not half an inch to an inch being gratuitous, according to the GFS. You can see the same thing on our European model, with the Euro actually being a little bit more conservative in terms of our total snowfall, even for our lake effect amounts over a 24-hour period. And as you can see, if you guys remember what we talked about at 700 and 850 and the relative humidity model at 850, this lines up extremely well with where we did a little bit of preliminary forecast before referencing these charts. And as a matter of fact, it looks like for much of the Midwest and the Northeast, wherever you are anticipating snow, we're looking at maybe 2 to 3 inches maximum, according to the Euro, and we'll take a look at our short-range ensembles to confirm this as well. This is going to be the National Weather Service blend of models, so this is straight from NWS, and this is an ensemble product for the short-range period between 0 and about maybe 80 to 90 hours on most model platforms. This one does happen to go out 200 hours, but we're going to stop at about the 3-day mark because that's when we're expecting this kind of scenario to wrap up. And as you can see, even the NWS blend of models is getting a little more sporty with their snow totals. It looks like we could see anywhere between 3 to 5 inches. And actually, it does look like we're erring on the side of more about 3 to 4 inches is the general thinking for this model, particularly, or this ensemble product, with, again, the lake effect amounts closest to our Great Lakes areas, especially in the Michigan Peninsula and just to the east of Lake Erie and Lake Huron, going up a little bit more so, and the higher terrain peaks in parts of the northern Appalachian Mountains here. And then last but not least, I want to look at one more model platform. This is your short-range ensemble forecast. Ensembles are your best friend if you really want to look at the general average thinking of what all your models are looking at in terms of what total of what sort of snowfall accumulation you can anticipate for your area. And again, the SHREF is thinking modest at best, maybe 1 to 3 inches across the board as that snow band works its way through, and it should be totally done with us by the time we get into the back end of this upcoming weekend. So nothing too crazy to worry about. If you've been seeing a lot of the other weather sources out there mentioning how this is going to go crazy, this just took a turn, this just got worse, it really hasn't. And I really wish that the hype sphere on the weather platform and in the weather community would calm down. There's a number of reputable sources out there proclaiming these more realistic values for the snow, the wintry precip, and even our rainfall as we go forward in time, which we'll touch on very briefly at the end of this segment. But all in all, folks, I'm just astonished, and that's kind of why I haven't been making these videos. Is it's incredible the clickbait and the hype and just the scare tactics I've been seeing put out there on YouTube, on social media alike, and even some of the bigger name sources as well, I feel like are upplaying or upscaling these events far more than they should be. And it's a shame to admit this, but I do believe, at least in my humble opinion, and you guys can smite me in the comments if you feel the need to do so, but in my humble opinion, we're taking advantage of the folks who get excited about these winter storms and who want snow for their area and hyping it up to make it seem like everybody's going to get snow and we're the Oprah Winfreys of these winter storms. You get snow, everybody gets a little snow, and unfortunately that's really not the case, and we really need to dial in the realism and the accuracy to keep you guys safe and ahead of the worst of these events, especially when and if, I should say when, because it's a matter of time, the big one does arrive. Now, what we're looking at here before we wrap up is a skew T sounding for central Tennessee, and as you can see here, we have very good subsidence and warming in the mid-levels of the environment, and if I go back in time using this forecast skew T sounding, that subsidence remains in place with a very subtle warm layer between 950 and 850 millibars throughout the duration of this event, as we have that warm layer coming up from the south out of the Gulf of Mexico through the Gulf Coast, and then we have our Arctic boundary coming in out of the northwest, and that's why I do think we have a very prevalent threat for some wintry mixed precip, if not more icing, sleet, and freezing drizzle. This is more than likely going to be a freezing drizzle type event because we typically see that with these sort of subsidence soundings on our skew T charts, where you can see we are pretty saturated in the low levels until you get to a certain point and your temperature line and your dew point line go away from each other. That is called subsidence, and it stabilizes the atmosphere. It acts as an upper level cap above the ground's floor, and as such, we typically don't see very heavy precip in the form of rain or moderate to heavy rainfall durations. We actually see more of that sprinkling, that misting, and that drizzle, and that's why I do think we could see some really good icing, not only at ground level, but on any sort of aircraft that may be operating through the Mid-Atlantic region, particularly just on the windward side of our Appalachians. So we definitely want to pay close attention to this and stay hunkered down before this can wrap itself up, and then it's free to go back out there, at least shortly thereafter, once we can get a little bit of that icing out of the picture, okay? And I know this has been a very, very long-winded Weather Center segment, and I thank every single one of you out there who've stuck with me to this point because this is also on my radar, and I don't see a lot of folks talking about it just yet. But if you take a look through Texas, Louisiana, getting up into Arkansas, and maybe blending into Mississippi as well, with this switch in our upper air pattern, we can expect a really good amount of return flow around the high pressure that's essentially going to be marinating over Bermuda, the Mid-Atlantic United States. And as such, we're going to have what's called an open Gulf, and there's going to be torrential rainfalls for parts of our Texas and Louisiana locations specifically. If you take the Euro through time when we get towards the back end of the loop, look at how much rainfall accumulation we're expecting down there through Texas, and it only gets worse as you go forward in time through Louisiana, Mississippi, and eventually as you get closer to that 240-hour mark. We don't have all of our 12Z data in just yet, but we are looking at some values exceeding the foot of rainfall, 12 inches of rainfall over an extended period of time. And if you guys remember back earlier in this video, I mentioned anybody can take a total rainfall chart, a total snowfall chart like this, run it to the end and get these outlandish numbers. But this, in this case, is actually a little more representative of what we're anticipating because we're going to have that extended period of an open Gulf, lots of warm air advection, lots of moisture advection occurring over the Gulf Coast states. And that's why I want to take you through time to see just how much of this continuous rainfall could accrue if you live in parts of Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and then further into parts of Georgia and the Florida Panhandle as well. So this is good for our drought conditions that are still ongoing, but not so good when we get such a hefty dose at one time. Too much of a good thing? inevitably becomes a bad thing, right, guys? Anyways, thank you very much for joining, guys. We're going to quickly go on the outro for this video. I really hope and appreciate that you liked this video, and I hope the clickbait in the beginning didn't turn a lot of you guys off. This is either going to make or break my channel here going forward, and I hope a lot of you long-term viewers can appreciate what it is I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to troll. I'm not trying to egg anybody on or cause any drama in the weather sphere. I mainly just want to come back on camera, make another hard segment for folks to refer back to at a later time if they want to, and just delineate and de-escalate a lot of this, dare I say, nonsense that's been happening across the weather community with a number of the other resources with these wintertime events, and it's just getting out of hand. I thought tropical season was bad, but shucks, we're on a whole other level now, and I hope this video made a lot of sense, and I hope this kind of brought a little bit more clarity to your local area if you are expecting snow, and you've been listening to certain people saying you're expecting 40 inches of snow with, you know, sleet the size of minivans and so on and so forth, because that's definitely not going to happen. We definitely want to prepare for some snow days, and especially if you live through those aforementioned states in the Midwest, we want to watch for this unfolding freezing rain, icing, and sleet event, because I do believe that in of itself, by itself, is a little more dangerous and hazardous than just strictly the couple of inches of snowfall that we're anticipating. But again, if you liked this video, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're brand new to the channel, and hope to see you again very soon when we host another Weather Center Live on this coming channel over the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll likely do one tomorrow night, if not Saturday at the very latest, but I hope to see you there. And until next time, guys, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.